they'll be featured again.
All right, so
You know, I'll support you.
well, so we'll start with a word of prayer here. Lord, it is always good to see one another. It's always good to share a little bit of life together down here in this room and upstairs in worship a little bit later. Thank you for the ways in which you have intertwined our lives, both the folks in this room and the folks who may be at home on the video. Thank you for the gift of each other. And thank you for what draws us together, following you, the choice that you made first to call us, and with grateful hearts, our response. We ask that you help us to understand just a little bit more what all that means today. Bless this conversation, bless the hearing of your word. We pray in Jesus' name, amen. Okay, so one of the things to know about the series, which I frankly wasn't actually clued into as much as I should have been. So we've got this participants guide, which is out of print, and we can't seem to get copies of. Yeah. And there's also a book by the same name that basically covers all of the material, but the participants guide doesn't actually, like other series that we've done, it doesn't actually reference the guide, reference the book back and forth to each other. We also have, interestingly enough, several editions of the book upstairs that were purchased, I think, for the library. A little confusing, but let me just explain why this is important. I'm going to have the sections of the participants workbook printed out for you each week. That's really all you need. That's all you need. Because in the video and through the questions and answers that we do in the participants book, the workbook, it covers all the material. Each week, there will be the section in the guide that we talk through in the time together. And then there's also follow-up material for the rest of the week. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. So last week we worked on session 1, and then there were questions basically to sort of ponder or look into a little bit more throughout the course of the week. We'll look at those a little bit this morning, just to kind of see if anything else stands out and to recap a little bit. And then session 2, I think I've got enough copies there. We'll make sure. But session 2, we'll work on this week, work our way through a little bit this week. And then there'll be some more, again, questions and sort of things to work on throughout the rest of the week. Does that make sense? Okay. Everybody at home, does that make sense? Anybody there? Yeah. Maybe eventually. Okay, so does anybody need a copy of last week's questions? Okay, great. There you go. Go. Yes? No?
I have it at home. Do we need it?
No, just, you know,
Okay.
can't hurt. Yeah. Yeah, it was, I think it was your first series, the soul keeping one.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, this comes a little bit earlier in his career. You'll know it by the video production value and the clothing. Yeah, the style was is a different time, and he had more hair. And you know, John, if you're listening to this, that's not a dig. We all had more hair back then. He's a good sport, though. So, you know, well, so what is this whole series kind of based on? If you're going to guess. There's a particular story that appears in multiple places in the Gospels, but basically the story, well, I guess we better read it.
Peter gets pulled out of the boat.
Peter gets called
Well,
out of the
Peter
boat.
goes out of the boat. They were all called.
Oh,
Well,
Ellen
it
just
wasn't
pointed out something.
specified, Right? He just said, get out of the boat.
yes, right?
And
Yes.
the only one that got out was Peter.
Yeah. Yes.
Impetuous.
Impetuous Peter. Well, yeah, so it's this story in which, again, the disciples are crossing the Sea of Galilee. It's late at night. Jesus is not with them. He has told them to go to the other side. And of course, the storm is upon them, and the wind and the waves, and it's pretty difficult. And of course, they see Jesus walking across the water, and they're immediately encouraged. Not really, right? They actually think that they're seeing what?
I go,
A ghost, right? They think that they're seeing a ghost. And there's this exchange that happens, right? There's this exchange that happens. I'll read it. The boat, battered by the waves, was far from land, for the wind was against them. And early in the morning, he came walking toward them on the sea. But when the disciples saw him walking on the sea, they were terrified, saying, "It is a ghost." And they cried out in fear. But immediately, Jesus spoke to them and said, "Take heart, it is I. Do not be afraid." Interesting turn of phrase there. He doesn't say, "It's me, Jesus." What does he say? It is I. Another version of that, we could say, I am. Yeah. Do not be afraid. You know, it reminds me in some ways of this encounter with the burning bush. Yes? And Peter answered him, "Lord, if it is you, command me to come to you on the water." If it is you, right? If it is you, come, tell me to come out across the water. Interesting. And he said, "Come." So Peter got out of the boat, started walking on the water, came toward Jesus, but when he noticed the strong wind, he became frightened and began to sink. He cried out, "Lord, save me." Jesus immediately reached out his hand, caught him, saying to him, "You have little faith. Why did you doubt?" When they got into the boat, the wind ceased, and those in the boat worshiped him, saying, "Truly, you are the Son of God." Right? And so we looked at what's the larger implications of this, and what are the ways in which we are called out of our own sort of metaphorical boats. Yes? And one of the big takeaways from that was this point that when Jesus calls and says, "Come," is he just talking to Peter? Doesn't appear to be just talking to Peter. Peter's just the only one that's got the guts to actually step out of the boat and go, right? And it does work for a little bit. Yes? Until Peter does what?
I was thinking about it.
Yeah, right? Starts noticing like how bad of an idea this is, right?
What am I doing?
What am I doing? Now, you know, we could probably resonate with that a little bit, right? Sure. But I'll also say, like, again, what about the other guys in the boat? Like, what's interesting to me is that when they see Peter doing it, we don't hear anything about, and then Thomas got right up to the edge and he was getting ready to step up, you know, like you don't hear anything about, and it would be remarkable. I think we would have heard about it if any of them had actually said, "Oh, okay, okay, let's go." Nobody budges, as far as I can tell in the story. And so what does that, I don't know, what does that tell us then about when the call is there to get out of the boat, whatever shape that may take in our lives, right? To be called out of the boat, out of what seems to be safe, out of what seems to be what everybody else conventionally thinks is the right way to go, what does that tell us? I have a feeling it may be a little lonely at first. Right?
Tells me to almost put away your rationalization process and go. Because your rationalization process is usually what's holds you back from doing whatever you really would like to do.
Mm-hmm. Which is a fairly human thing, isn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, one of the most primitive instincts that human beings have is to maximize pleasure and minimize pain. Right? That's built into us. That's fundamental to sort of how we make decisions, unless we use this more evolved part of our brain. The most primitive part basically really is interested in that. We're always scanning for where's the pain, where's the pleasure. And we don't tend to actually move towards pain instinctively, do we? I mean, if we did, we'd be at the gym a lot more, wouldn't we? I mean,
Many times we find too, that people are much less schooled in religion, so to speak, are the ones who are most willing to step out of the boat in comparison to the ones who have supposedly emerged.
sure. Which probably tells us something about what we can do sometimes with faith and sort of theology and religious practice, doesn't it? We can end up treating it as a boat that we think we've got some control over because we know what the rules are and we know how to go about it and, you know, how to play it safe, right? Put a little in the plate every Sunday. Be regular for church. Make sure not to take anybody else's seat in the pews. Make sure we're very somber during communion. No smiling, you know. I'm teasing, of course, but right? Yeah. Hey, come on in.
Good, how are you?
Sorry.
Yeah, jump in, jump in.
Hi.
So, do we need any extras? Okay. So this week, well, any further observations from last week? One of the questions that is asked in last week towards the end of the sections is, do you think you are a risk taker or a comfort seeker? Risk taker or comfort seeker? Why? Why? So I'm curious who we're in the room with. We're risk takers or comfort seekers? Or maybe you're like, well, I think I walk a nice line there. That nobody is speaking up right now says a lot.
He's
I
risk
know I'm
taker.
accused of being a risk taker.
Uh-huh. I feel like I might have been able to guess that.
Yes.
I think inherent to being in a bell choir are put in positions to be risk takers
Okay.
because you play your bells.
Uh-huh.
And if you don't play your bells, nobody else is going to play them.
Uh-huh.
But you play your bells by yourself.
I take comfort that I just have my bells.
Don't have to worry about everyone else's bells.
I love it. Right? I love it.
But you depend on the whole group.
Yeah.
To make it sound right.
Indeed. Right? If you want to find out just how limited your control is, join a bell choir. Right? Even if you can control when you ring, you can't control what everybody else does, you know? Yeah.
But
Sure.
I think a bell choir is a picture of what God wants the church to
Okay.
be. It
Sure.
only sounds the best when everybody does what he wants them to do.
And is willing to take the risk, right? Yeah. Yeah. A nervous bell choir is a bell choir that is probably not going to stay on the beat, right? For sure. So and it probably isn't fair to say comfort seeker versus risk taker, right? We might say, what would we say instead of comfort seeker? We might say
Helper.
helper. Okay, yes, helper, more comfortable in the helping role. We might say rule follower. Some folks, right, are afraid of disrupting certain social conventions, and so don't wanna rock the boat here, right? Why is it important for us to kind of know about ourselves, where we are in this whole risk taker, comfort seeker continuum?
Because even if you're a risk taker, if you take risks quite often, you have a comfort zone there as much as you have a comfort zone by not.
That's right. That's right. Right? Our job is not to compare ourselves to each other and say, right, I should be as big a risk taker as this person over here, right? What's in front of us is to simply notice our natural tendencies and ask the question, what would it look like for me to get out of the boat in some way? I don't have to do it the way that Randy does it. I don't have to do it the way that Chris does it, right? But I do need to think about what my natural sort of tendency is, what I veer towards. Yes? Well, let's hear what John Ortberg has to say about all this.
Did you know that God has given each of us at least one great gift? And He cares a lot about how we use it. During our time together today, we'll look at Jesus' parable of the three servants who were entrusted with a portion of their master's riches. And then we'll consider the message that parable has for us today, explore options we have regarding our gift, and see what using our gift has to do with stepping out of the boat and walking on water. During the teaching time, you'll see the group members in the video painting on plates a picture that identifies each of their unique gifts. And I'd like to begin our session together by having each of you identify a gift God has given you. So get some paper plates and magic markers and draw a representative picture of that gift on the plate. Have fun with it. And as you work on those, continue on to the questions to think about section in your participants guide and answer the questions there.
Okay, so I'm not making anybody do paper plates with, pictures of gifts on them. Although I had toyed with the idea, I had. And then I thought, yeah, but I want people on week 3 to show up. So I see I chose wisely. I did not get out of the boat on this one. But if you were, I have a feeling even without the paper plates, this is going to be like pulling teeth. But if you were to identify a gift, right? A gift that you feel like you have been given by God, something that has been entrusted to you, right? A gift that you've been given. What might it be?
My head went another direction. Remember my mom,
Okay.
and thinking back on her, she definitely had the gift of helps. I mean, I'd hear her up in the middle of the night and she'd be putting this stuff we called tar babies. Anybody remember tar baby? Oh boy, John Wayne. Tar baby is a concoction, and you mix it all up together, and it was really dark brown, and people thought it smelled bad, but I liked the smell of it.
Okay.
And you put it on your chest, and you could breathe easier.
Oh, okay, like a poultice.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. And the girl across the street had breathing issues. She's my age.
Okay.
And so that stuff up and hidden across the road, and they'd plaster it on her, and she could breathe better.
Mm.
And I don't know, it's a tar baby.
Okay. So the gift of help. Okay. Or you can tell me about somebody else and the gift that you feel like God has given them. That's fine too. Sometimes we don't like the spotlight too much on ourselves.
I guess I feel God has given me the gift of being comfortable with talking to people about problems and how to work through them without any fear of doing that.
That's
You don't make judgment on you.
No, I
listen to-
try not to judge anybody, but I think it's so important. And the other thing I think is important is when you're in a group of people, do you ever notice how many times something is discussed? People, are, I don't know if I want to go there. I'd like to go there. So the only reason I like to go there is because if you do that, other people then may feel comfortable to do it also.
sure.
That's the risk taker in you, Randy.
It's just like when you're in a group and somebody asks a question and you know the answer, but you try and phrase things so that other people will also understand and know. I think that's the important thing for me in the group is that everybody understands. Even if you ask questions that sound stupid that you know the answer to, it sometimes helps other people to hear that.
So meeting people where they are and with a non-judgmental sort of approach that's also not afraid to talk about the deeper things. It's a gift, right? Not all of us feel equipped to do that. Yes, sure.
So my favorite job when I worked at the Gap in college was the greeter.
Huh.
I loved greeting people at the door. And you do that so well. And I also enjoy encouraging people. So I think that those kind of go hand in hand. But I picture the emoji, on our phones where it's, the hands up and.
I would have never get
You're so lucky.
every day.
Good answer.
That's right.
Oh, I already, yeah, I know my gift. I know my gift. I know my gift.
I'd say I'm more of a helper. That's where I'd rather be is behind, but yet at the same time, I know that sometimes you have to push, be more face-to-face personable and that, that's not my comfort zone.
Uh-huh.
I don't want to just seem like, okay, my spiritual gift is just helping. So I'm just going to get back here in the corner and do this. No, sometimes you do need to push maybe where you're not strong.
It's okay if you mention someone else in the room's gift if they don't feel comfortable.
Sure.
Wherever there's a person whose gift is to be very well organized, unbelievably well organized, and also have the ability to carry out what you do. That is a wonderful gift that she has.
Agree.
Thank you, Randy.
It's true. That's true. People will know you. Know you well.
Well, we couldn't do the garden without you. Very willing and the conversations, and you're right, like Randy's conversations in the gardening. It's not only what you do in the garden, but how you bring people together. Yeah, we could just go around and point out gifts.
Well, and isn't that, yeah, in
It's so
that,
much easier to
Yeah.
find other people's gifts and then talk about it.
well, and if they were all the same, it wouldn't work quite the same way, would it? Right? The
Well, they
gifts
can be
work
the
off of
same
each
and
other.
look different.
What's that?
They can be the same and look different.
Sure. Absolutely.
You can't have all bells sound the same. You have to, every bell has to be.
There you
Oh,
go,
I like that
Joyce.
one. I like that one.
We're running with this metaphor today.
I will also say this, though, a word of caution about our gifts. What might be my word of caution about our gifts?
Yeah.
Could be pride, absolutely.
It could become comfort.
Same one.
you know.
I agree.
I think of a very easy example that doing, the treasure work is kind of a comfort. I just, that's a very, it's a good fit for me. And when I'm in the office, I can lose myself. Me and the computer. Great friend, and that is a comfort.
Sure.
It might be a gift that that those things fit, but it can be also, I need to do this.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh. Right? Yeah.
We went to a different church, 15, 20 years ago. They were big into like a spiritual gifts assessment.
Mhm.
You guys ever did that? Well, there was also a lot of talk about saying no, if like being brave enough to say no to projects if you didn't feel like. So what ended up happening is everybody had their gifts assessment, something would need done, and they'd say, oh, sorry, that's not my gift.
Oh.
No. And so there was a lot of inactivity that kind of bred, instead of people following their gifts and working on things, they would use that as an excuse to say, yeah, that's not for me.
Yeah, we can get very comfortable in the places where we feel the strongest and uncomfortable sometimes with, right? Yeah. Trying a little different approach or letting somebody else with a similar gift, or you hope that they will do something, right? Yeah. Okay.
I've observed over the years that people with the gift of helps, especially with the gift of helps, often think that they don't have a gift.
Mm.
They're just
Just doing what they should do and not thinking of it as a gift.
just helping, and they don't understand that people have trouble doing that.
Mhm.
Because it comes in that.
Sure.
What do you see as your gift?
Um, I think I like to try to figure things out and help other people to figure things out too, or discover something that that they didn't even realize was something that's important, or to find a way where there doesn't seem to be a way, including going the hard places that people are uncomfortable with. I think I think I enjoy the most doing that in this kind of a context.
You're a good listener, which is wonderful.
Well, thank you. Speaking of listening, let's see what Mr. Ortberg has to say. Just got to get to the optometrist. I think, which one's it on? There we go.
We're going to talk in this session about the fact that every one of us has a gift, and it matters what you do with So to help us remember that, Scott and Steve are going to hand out plates. Everybody's going to get a plate and a paintbrush and some paint. And I'd like for you to put on there a representation of a gift or a talent or an ability that God has given to you. It may be something that you enjoy doing a lot, something that you're really good at, but this is not a time to be modest, okay? God gives everybody gifts. Years ago, my father's mom passed away. And my grandfather called my mother up and he said, Kathy, I was going through some of Florence's things in our attic. And I found a box of dishes. And I was going to just give them away to the Salvation Army. But they're blue. And I know that blue is your favorite color. So if you'd like to have them, you can keep them. So my mom went over to my grandfather's house and opened up this box. And she found a set of the most exquisite china she had ever seen. So they started talking to relatives to try to piece together the story about this china. And what they found was that when my grandmother was a young girl growing up, on a real special occasion, like if it was her birthday or confirmation, she'd get one cup or one saucer because it was very expensive and they were not a wealthy family. And because it was so valuable, she put the china very carefully in a box and stored it in the attic and saved it for a very special occasion. And no occasion that special ever came. She never used the china. She went to her grave and she never used the greatest gift that she had ever been given. My mother got a hold of that china and she uses it promiscuously. Every chance she gets, she drags the china out. This looks something like the china, but not exactly, because my mom would not let me bring it here. When you have a great gift, there are two ways that you can look at it. One is you can say, this gift is too valuable to be used. It's too valuable to risk. The other way you can look at it is to say, it's too valuable not to be used. Now, every one of you is drawing right now an expression of the fact that God has given you some gift. And you will not have fulfilled your mission as a human being if you don't use the gift that God has given to you. Marcia's going to read a quote about what happens to human beings when they don't grow and develop their gifts and stagnation sets in. Marcia, would you read that for us?
Stagnation leads to sinful patterns of behavior that never get confronted and changed, abilities and gifts that never get cultivated and deployed, until weeks become months and months turn into years, and one day you're looking back on a life of deep, intimate, gut-wrenchingly honest conversations you never had, great bold prayers you never prayed, exhilarating risks you never took, sacrificial gifts you never offered, lives you never touched. And you're sitting in a recliner with a shriveled soul and forgotten dreams. And you realize there was a world of desperate need and a great God calling you to be part of something bigger than yourself. You see the person you could have become, but did not. You never followed your calling. You never got out of the boat.
One of Jesus' most unforgettable stories is a story about somebody who's given a great gift, a great opportunity, and they just bury it. And most of us are familiar with this story of the man who gives gifts to his three servants. But part of what you need to understand to get this story is that Jesus is talking about a massive amount of money. A talent was somewhere in the neighborhood of 15 years worth of work for somebody. And in a day when people normally wouldn't even save up as much money as they had earned in a day, a talent was a huge amount of money. So Jesus really is talking about three people who receive a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. You ever have a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity? When Nance and I were getting married and I was going to go on a honeymoon, I wanted to be able to go someplace really nice. And the only way that I could think of to make money, because I was in graduate school at the time, was to go on a game show. I lived in Southern California. So I actually went on a show called Tic-Tac-Doe. Anybody remember a show called Tic-Tac-Doe? And it was hosted by a guy named Wink Martindale. And I was up against the guy who had won 4 consecutive games. But we had about 4 or 5 consecutive tie games. There was more money in the pot than I had ever seen. And finally, this lawyer missed a question, so I had a chance to win the game. Now, the computer would randomly generate whatever category your question was going to be. The box that I needed to win, category that came up was mixed drinks. And I could have gone for another box, but oh no, I wanted to get this one now. Wink asked the question, what's the recipe for a drink called a Rob Roy? I said, Wink, I'm a pastor at a church. I'm in trouble if I get this right, and I'm in trouble if I get it wrong. We honeymooned in Wisconsin. It's a once in a lifetime opportunity, and I blew it. Well, the first thing you have to understand to get Jesus' story is that the master is offering these three servants a once in a lifetime opportunity. And Doug's going to read what might have been going on in the mind of one of the servants who would get a chance like this from a master. Doug, would you read that for us?
I thought my whole life was condemned to be routine. I had dreams but couldn't pursue them, passions but couldn't follow them, talents but couldn't test them. I was never in a position to plan, take risks, or take initiative. My life was comfortable. I wasn't facing starvation, but I longed for something more. I wanted to make a difference. And just when I was ready to give up hope, the master did something I've never heard of anyone doing before. He called me into his office, looked at me from behind his desk with a twinkle in his eye, and entrusted a large portion of what belongs to him to me. I can't believe he has that kind of faith in me. I can't believe I have this opportunity. I feel like a thoroughbred that's been set free to run.
Now, for two of the men in Jesus' story, that's the response they have. They say, it's a once in a lifetime opportunity. I don't want to miss it. And if you take a moment and look at whatever's on your plate, that's expressing part of the once in a lifetime opportunity that God has entrusted to you. It's a gift he's given to you. But it matters what you do with that gift. It matters more than you can imagine. Because of the second part of Jesus' story, the Lord of the gift is also the Lord of the settled account. Jesus says that one day the master comes back and he settles the account. He asks of each servant, what did you do with what I gave you? The idea here is all of us are going to answer that question to God one day. And we don't do so well with that because every human being has a way of trying to evade responsibility for our lives. He will not ask you, what did you do with what I gave to somebody else? It's very interesting in this story to me that the man that had 5 talents and the man that had 2 talents both invested. They took risks. They took chances. It's the guy who received only 1 talent who buried what was given to him. And I wonder if maybe it's because he got caught up comparing himself to somebody else. And the day will come when God's going to ask you, Scott or Steve or Doug or Julie, I'm not going to ask you, what did you do with the gift that I gave to Amy or Shirley or Crystal or Marcia? He's just going to say, what did you do with what I gave to you? Jesus says that the master of this story is not only the Lord of the gift, and he's not only the Lord of the settled account, he's also the Lord of the reward. When the master comes back, he says to everybody that was faithful, everybody who used what they were given, well done, good and faithful servant. He says a remarkable thing. You've been faithful in a few things. I'm going to put you in charge of many things. A lot of people have the idea of heaven, that they ought to want to go there, but it's really going to be pretty boring, kind of like an eternity in Palm Springs or something. That's not the picture Jesus paints. He says, in this life, you were a steward of the gifts that I gave you. You had adventure and risk, but it's nothing compared to the way that you're going to grow and honor God and be able to serve and develop in the kingdom that's coming. And that's the reward that you're going into. I'm going to say one other thing about this. Take a look at that gift that is expressed on your plate for a moment. Because it may be for some of you that you haven't used that gift for a long time. Remember what it is that Jesus said that the third servant, the unfaithful servant, did with this gift? He took it out and did what? He buried it. And it may be that for a long time, your gift has been buried. Maybe you've been afraid. Maybe you didn't want to take a risk. Maybe you just got kind of stuck in a routine. But you need to know that the Lord of the gift, the Lord of the settled account, is perfectly able of redeeming gifts that have been buried for a long time. So I don't care how long it's been buried. Doesn't make any difference how hopeless it seems to you. God can reclaim the gift that he's given you and use it in wonderful, wonderful ways if you'll just let him start. And today's the perfect time. Because the Lord of the gift and the Lord of the settled account is also the Lord of the reward. So use your gift.
You're also artistic.
Yeah.
That can't be real.
Somebody did a stick figure, and I was like, "That's my people."
Yeah, they didn't show that
They
one.
didn't show it.
Uh-huh.
I was wondering why we went to the beach.
We should.
Well, it's a little chilly at the beach this morning, Randy. We could certainly work on a trip up to Presque Isle. But
Go down the Shannon Creek.
that's right. We could go to the Little Neshannock.
Yes, not far away.
Yeah. Actually, I think I'm heading there later today. They stocked earlier this week, just in case anybody was wondering. And back on track. So, again, what do we know about this? What do we know about this parable anyway? I mean, are folks familiar with the parable? Basically, that the master is going to go away. He leaves them with varying talents. He comes back, right? Okay. And talked a little bit about what it what it might mean to bury, right? To bury your gift, right? Versus to put it in play. But to put it in play, of course, involves some degree of risk. Yes. Okay. What are the implications for us?
If you didn't do anything with your gifts,
Mhm.
you surely wonder what's going to be your end result. Because if you knew you had gifts, and you didn't use them, gee whiz, when you think about it, how do you explain it? It's a hard one because, sometimes people run away from their gifts.
Sure.
They don't want to really be involved in doing whatever it takes, a risk.
Sure.
And it's not comfortable being out in left field all the time, but it's fun.
It very well can be, right?
Yes.
It very well can be. I remember Clint Hurdle talking about this a little bit. It was interesting. If you've ever, folks know who I'm talking about, former manager of the Pirates. I mean, he talked about the first part of his career and the second part of his career. In the first part of his career, he really loved baseball. He did love it quite a bit, and he was very, very competitive. But he was sort of eternally trying to do it in a way that also won approval. And ultimately, if you're gonna coach or manage baseball, you are not going to be everybody's favorite all the time, right? And ultimately, the way he coped with that was to drink, and ended up drinking a lot, so much so that it pretty much almost cost him everything. And so, coming out of that, the second half of life, he really got more focused on, frankly, getting comfortable with uncomfortable situations, living into the values that are my values, right? So making decisions sometimes that may or may not turn out, but trying to be consistent in living into these values. And one of them was basically, I'm not going to base my self-worth on how much everybody else approves of what I do, because that's too mercurial. And it doesn't end anywhere good for me. And I don't think it's good for the players. I don't think it's good for, and so he really leaned into that quite a bit. Yes?
It's uncomfortable if you, for example, have an idea about something and you really feel strongly about that idea and you know that it will work. It can be very difficult sometimes to sell everybody else on your idea. But on the other side of it is, if you don't, then you end up feeling like you're living, to me, in mediocrity. You're never going to do anything. So sometimes, but it is uncomfortable. You know, if you have an idea and you really feel strongly about it, and you have to sell it to a bunch of people that you know aren't gonna want to like it at first.
Yeah, sure.
But if it works, it's amazing. If it doesn't, you're in trouble.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and there's the discomfort sometimes of actually building consensus, right? It's one thing to say, you should do this, follow me on this, but not really work on building some consensus, right? And enfranchising others and basically, you know, allowing it to develop together or bring it along together. Yes, we can just be very much committed to the prophetic voice that basically walks in and says, this is what needs to change. And I'm gone, right? I'm not going to mess around anymore with these meetings. I'm not, you know, right? There's varying kinds of discomfort.
When we look at the 12, they were all risk takers because they were all out there in a very different, and boy, they took risks.
Sure.
Really
Yeah.
got
Look,
everlasting life.
look what it got him. Speaking of which, right, we talked earlier about the different kinds of gifts that are in the room here right now. Yeah. And there was a variety, right? A variety of those. What kind of gifts does the Bible say that God gives? We've got some lists here and there. Let's see if we can take a look at a couple. So from John chapter 10, verse 28. I give them eternal life, and they will never perish. No one will snatch them out of my hand. Right? So eternal life is a gift. Yeah, you just spoke to that, Randy. What other gifts are mentioned? Anybody remember any other gifts that are given? Peace I leave with you, my peace I give to you. I do not give to you as the world gives. Do not let your hearts be troubled. Do not let them be afraid. Right? So another gift that God gives to us is peace, eternal life, peace, right? These are gifts that God gives. But there are others, aren't there? Some of you are ordained. Yeah? Now I know I've got session members, either currently active or formerly active. I know I've got deacons in the room, right? Ordination is for life. It's not just while you are serving actively on committee, it's for life. And the ordination is a recognition of what?
Gifts and service.
Gifts of service, yes, right? Anything else? Gifts of teaching, gifts of leadership, right? Truly, it's part of, I mean, it's part of the sort of deciding about who God is calling to take these leadership and servant leadership roles, isn't it? Gifts.
Also gives you security. You should be secure if you feel God's taking care of.
Okay, yeah, right. The gift of security. Sure. That is a gift, isn't it? Okay.
Joy is a gift.
Joy is a tremendous gift. Joy is a tremendous gift. I try to unwrap some of that every day. Because it's there, you know, it is there. We don't always see it. We don't always paying attention to it, but it is there. Some of you have heard me talk about the GLAD technique. Do you guys remember this one? It's an acronym. So the GLAD technique basically goes like this. It's an opportunity each day to sort of notice and sort of savor and give thanks for some of the things that are truly life-giving. And so the G in GLAD is for gratitude. And I just notice and give thanks for something, maybe something simple, maybe something profound. The L is for, does anybody remember? Something that I have learned. Something that I have learned. And again, it could be something relatively simple. It could be something pretty profound. Sometimes we learn something that's just life-changing for us. Other times we learn something that's just really intriguing. But it's life-giving. The A is for accomplishment. Something that I've accomplished this day. Could be humble, could be significant, nonetheless. And really, I mean, frankly, sometimes when we're really struggling, we don't give ourselves any credit for any accomplishment. Sometimes getting up out of bed and getting a shower, when you are really struggling, when you are really deep in that hole, quite the accomplishment. Truly. And the D is for delight. Something that may be a simple delight, something that may be an extravagant one. Oftentimes, this is where we'll find joy. Something that made you laugh out loud. Something that made you smile, maybe outside or inside. So we were driving down the road this morning on our way here. What did you see?
Trees.
The trees, and that one in particular.
Yeah, right on the corner of Newcastle Street and Y. So I keep looking at this and how it changes it's changing every day, and just how beautiful.
There's one tree that you should look at this year, if you've never seen it before. It's on the Amish freeway. Amish freeway.
Which one are you talking about?
No idea what that is.
The Amish freeway, you go through Fayette and go straight through and head towards 80.
Okay.
Okay.
Oh, on the Newcastle
Okay.
Mercer Road.
As you're going about 2/3 of the way up that road, maybe 3/4, there's a tree that sits on the side of the hill.
Okay.
It turns yellow, and then all of a sudden, when the leaves come out, they're all over the side of that hill there. And it knocks your socks off. And I've mentioned several of my friends and I, we used to go hunting and we would go by that thing. And to this day, when we're together, I said, "Did you see the tree?" It's so beautiful. It's on the left-hand side.
Okay.
And there used to be a house right there, but the house now sits back up on the hill, but it's right on the hillside,
Okay.
the left-hand side going up that road.
Is it before you get to 208?
It's
after.
No, it's after. It's
So
just,
go past.
it's
yeah.
much closer to 19 as you get to 19.
Okay.
Oh, okay.
You're going sort of down off the grade like that, and it'll be right on the side of the hill.
Okay.
Okay. Okay. We'll have
I
to
know
drive
I
on
will.
that.
It'll-
We're all
gonna
it'll-
be up
and
It'll
down.
make you feel good.
Love it. I love it.
But one that's unique that I always watch is neighbor across the street from us. They have a tree it's green right now. It'll stay green until the very end. Everything else is down, all the leaves, and then it turns yellow.
Mm.
So it's like it shines on its